Hey guys, Darren back again. Today we're going to clean up some controllers, specifically the SEGA MkIII and the old Master System. So this box here in front of us, that's out of my personal collection. And this is the sort of stuff I collect. Very original boxed consoles and so forth. You know, often quite obscure Japanese stuff. I quite like it. So I haven't actually cleaned these controllers yet, so it's a perfect excuse to open this up and give it a clean. You know, look how fresh all this is, like all boxed, perfect manuals, Japanese power supply. I've even put in an aftermarket power supply out of the range that I make in Global Garage, just to power it with an Australian adapter if needed. It all fits in the box, so I thought that was kind of cool. Here's the console and controllers. These controllers are actually detachable, so we'll take these out. We'll leave the console in, and we'll just put that aside. Alright, here are the controllers. So yeah, they got a bit of poly on the cables. We'll give that a clean. But yeah, look at these things. Wow. They feel good. They still feel brand new. If you haven't seen a Mark III controller, well, you know, here it is. It began with the it actually began with the SG-1000. It's slightly different layout. I'll talk about that more in my evolution video, but as things progressed, Sega actually did copy Nintendo in this era. And if you look closely, this is a fair copy of the old Famicom controller, and this is the last of its evolution. This is the Mark III. So there was SG-1000, there was Mark II, and then there was Mark III, and the D-pad button and arrangement changed, and they really just copied Nintendo, really, because Nintendo came up with the D-pad idea first, and Sega jumped on board, and then it gets pretty interesting from here on in, and I'll talk about that later. I'm kind of hanging to make that video, but I want to clean all these controllers first, and then we'll look at clean controllers and we'll go right through the generation. So I won't ramble on too much more. Let's pull these apart and see what we can find inside, what dirt and stuff lurks inside, and then we'll give them a clean. So 6 screws as always. Just before I lift the lid, this was model SJ152. I think you can see that there. Yep. Okay. We've still got some screws attached. There we go. Okay, so we'll leave all the screws in place. Flip it over. Okay, so we've actually got a bit of a broken post on this one. Sorry, I'll put that back in shot. We've actually got a bit of a broken post on this one. That screw was spinning and I was wondering why, and we've lost a post there, so we might be able to super glue that back as part of this process. We've got a bit of foam here. This is the sort of foam that I suspect lives in the Master System controller as well, in the Square edition. And there's 2 editions, there's an octagon and a square. I'll get to that in the next part of this video, but this is a really good example of the type of foam that Sega used, and it's just all starting to deteriorate, and that leads to some wobbling, D-pad wobbling problems in the old Master System. So have a look at that, and I'll get to that later. But okay, so then the board is just a 2-part board, much like the Master System is. It actually looks pretty clean. Membranes are actually, I think they're actually identical. This is an octagon style design, which is interesting to see. This is the quite common Master System style, so that's really interesting that this was the first. I'm jumping a bit ahead of myself, but yeah, just take note of the shape of all this, so that's kind of cool. And 2 little buttons, so we'll give that a wash. All these plastic parts get washed. I'm just going to take care of this particular piece and that foam. So the only reason I can think that that foam exists It's not got anything to do with the board. It's actually a cutout there. I think these little clips that clip into the side of the console, all that foam might do is when you click it in, it just might suppress the clicking noise, like just might make it a bit more of a soft click in. I don't know. There's nothing else really in the way that would... See, that flips over there, and that's it's just a gap there. There's nothing on that side. The board's got nothing to do with it. Maybe just click suppressant. I don't know. That's really odd. If anyone knows what that foam is for, other than what I've said, that's something kind of interesting. Well, not really, but I like to think about and look at all aspects of these controllers and work out what each part does, and that's a bit of a mystery, that one. All right, so this broken post, we need to get this out. You know what? I might just be able to hold it. Yeah, I can. Okay, so that's out. Get the screws out. Never take these plastic cases to the wash without removing all the screws, because invariably they're going to fall out and go straight down the drain. Little tiny screws like that, you'll lose them in 2 seconds flat, so don't do that. I've just gone ahead and pulled the back off the next controller just before we go out to wash. I may as well do all of these parts. And something that's quite interesting is if you look closely inside this rear case, right about there, you'll see the number 2. And on the first one we pulled apart, you see the number 1. So they're actually different. They're actually labeled. So that's kind of interesting. So keep track of your parts. Like, they are pretty much identical, but let's have a look if there's a corresponding 2 inside this second controller. It's got a 3 inside it. 3. What did this one have? 3 as well. It's interesting. So why are these ones different? So anyway, I think they're the same, but I want to keep them separate. I'll keep them as they were. Alright, so I'll take this off to wash. We'll come back. We'll super glue the post back in. And then we'll refit, ice prop it all, refit, and put it all back together. Give it a bit of a condition as well. Alright guys, let me just go and wash these up. Okay, I actually lost the audio to this section, so I'm just going to quickly overdub this. With the magic of editing, we're back from the washing, and the plastic parts have come up really nicely. So it's basically brand new. I don't think this controller's really even been used much. The foam part in there, I made sure it was nice and dry after sitting in the sun, and I've blown some compressed air through those holes to make sure it's not got any water trapped in there. I actually lost a second plastic post, which was a bit annoying. It was already half broken, and that came off during the wash. So we're going to go ahead and super glue these back on, and hopefully they sit quite nicely. So I've got some super glue here. It's Selly's Quick Fix brush style. I think this brush style just gives more control, and the little squeeze tubes tend to dry out when you don't use them as well, so recommend picking one of those up. With a bit of fiddling, I got these to sit in the right spot, and it all looks really good. One in the middle and one in the corner are all good. Okay, so with those bits all glued back in and all set, let's just do a quick clean of the contacts and we'll reassemble. So I've just gathered all my boards and silicon parts together, and we'll give them a spray and a wipe down. These are all in really good condition, so I don't imagine too much will come off. Yeah, look at that. It's really clean. Really clean. Yeah, a lot of black stuff usually comes off, so these ones are in remarkable condition. I don't think this console's actually been used much in its life, this old Mark III. I think it's you know, from the condition of the box and everything is in, I don't think it was really used much at all. As I was washing up the controller parts, I had a look at the cable where all that polystyrene was sort of stuck to the cable, and it's been sitting so long in a box that it's actually kind of melted a little bit, and I'll show you that in a second. Okay, so they're all really clean. So yeah, the cable, I'll just show you that quickly. I went through it with a bit of warm water and then also isopropyl to try and get it all off, and I got most of it off, but what's interesting, if you look closely at this cable, it's actually partly melted. So this part's all sort of surface stuff, but if you go along the cable, there's parts that I found that were actually melted into the cable. Yeah, like that one's all pitted and damaged right there. So I'm not too worried about this. It's all just part of the original, you know, an honest original console. It's part of the deal. It's been sitting in a box for so long, pressed up against polystyrene, that it's all started to just break down, and the plastics have all started to let go a little bit. You know, it's not the best, but it's not the worst either. I actually don't mind it because it just proves that it's a genuine controller and genuine product of, you know, 30 years old, and it hasn't really been used. It's just been sitting in a box for that long, and I think that highlights the point that it has just been sitting for so long. So anyway, yeah, not perfect, but not too bad. All right, so let's get our parts. These are our matching parts that came apart, and all we're going to need to do is drop in our buttons. Put our membranes on top of the buttons. Put in a D-pad rubber membrane. That goes over there. And drop the board in. Now you've got to be careful here. This is one of the posts that I replaced. So let's just see if it snaps off or not. Hey, look, it looks all right. So I've got that together. And then we'll flip this over. Put that back together. Yeah, that's pretty good. Alright, I'll quickly put in some screws. Bit of surface rust on the head of that screw. I might spray some isopropyl onto that. Okay. Now this particular post, this is the one that broke, so I'm just going to screw this in really gently. Make sure that actually goes on. That'll do, but I want to over tighten that one. Okay, so that's all screwed back together, and we flip it over and yeah, it looks brand new basically. Very nice. Give you a close-up of that. Yeah, look at that. Really clean, really fresh, and you know, ready to put back in the box and, you know, put back in its plastic little house, and off it goes for another 30 years. Yeah, it's a slight shame about these cables, but it is what it is, so that doesn't really bother me. Alright, look, I won't show you how to reassemble the next one. It's exactly the same. So let's move on to the master system. They're quite basic. These original controllers are very basic. They're very square, quite sharp, square edges. But you know what? Having said that, they're pretty good to play. So there's not really much going on with these things. So let's just start off by pulling out the 6 screws at the back. Alright, then we open it up. The back just lifts straight off, and there's usually junk and crap in there, so we'll give that a wash in a second. And then we've got the cable wrapped around these posts for strain relief. So the reason they do that is because, you know, when you pull on the cable, it pulls against these posts and doesn't pull on the circuit board. So just take note of which way that goes, and we'll pull that out. Wow, this one's really filthy. It's filthy, and that actual membrane there is not in the best condition, so I might have to dig up the spare parts box and look at replacing that one. So that one goes on a diagonal. Just always remember which way they go. It's really filthy in here, so we'll give that a solid clean as well. The best way to clean these is just to completely submerge them in water and give them a good scrub. So I'll keep this together and we'll take that outside. So first thing you notice with the D-pad is it's broken. So the edges here are nice and pronounced. They're quite large, and that's how it should be all the way around, and it's not. So it's quite damaged, this one. In fact, that's broken as well. Yeah, there you go. And what happens is they just kind of tend to fall through. So yeah, not the best plastic that these are made from, and they're just quite fragile. It falls through. So we've got two options here. We can either A, just melt a bit of the plastic and just make a new lip on the edge, which usually works fine, or B, look at getting a replacement. So I'm actually trying to 3D print replacements for these parts right now. I've got a 3D printer on order, which is they've come down in so much in value. I thought it'd be time to look into this. It's on order, and once I get that, I'm going to try and copy these parts and actually improve them a little bit and make drop-in replacements, because they just always break. So that's something to look out for soon. So this part of the board, the circuit board, we can easily just take care of this right now. This one is absolutely filthy. I've rarely seen one this bad, actually. So start by just physically getting all the crap off it, and then get your isopropyl alcohol, spray it on the contacts, get your cotton bud, and give it a quick pass to get all the dirt off. Change ends of the cotton bud and go over it in a bit more detail and a bit more pressure. Really try and clean that up. This one is disgusting. Oh, there you go. It's a good demo of why the buttons don't respond. You push a button on the controller and it doesn't do much. That's because of all this crap inside it. Well, that one's useless. Let's a bit more alcohol. And just keep turning the cotton bud. Keep turning it, keep rubbing it until you get all of it off. Like, it's really bad. You can be quite brutal with these. They're quite strong. If you're not going to damage it by using a nice cotton tip. You're not going to really cut into these traces at all. It's quite safe. So go ahead and put a bit of pressure on that with your alcohol, and then it'll come up quite well. I'll just do the same with this side. And then just keep going. And really get that clean, well, as clean as possible. Okay, so that'll probably do it. That looks pretty good. Much better than what it started as, so that's good. You're going to go through a lot of cotton buds, so just buy these in bulk, obviously. Just go to a pharmacy and buy like a whole container of maybe, I don't know, 50 or so. They're extremely cheap, so just go through them. Don't be stingy and tight on that. Just use them as necessary. These membranes are pretty easy to clean as well. That one there is so damaged that I'm going to replace it. So if you have a quick look, the actual contact is all broken. So that one's dead. So if you get one like that that's just so far gone, it's just not worth messing about with. Ones like that are still good. So let's go ahead and clean these up. Just spray alcohol straight onto them. Make sure both sides are okay. Grab your cotton bud and just go through it. Just give these a generous rub with alcohol. You don't have to really push too hard on these because it is a carbon pad, and if you kind of rub at it too hard, you might start taking the carbon off. That one's actually slightly damaged. I didn't notice that. So yeah, it still might be okay in the position it's going to sit in. It might be okay. We'll have to test that. I have got a spare one of those as well. So, it pays to pick up these sort of controllers in all sorts of conditions. Sometimes you pick them up broken. Sometimes you pick them up perfect. I'd recommend just picking them up whenever you see them at a good price, because you will need spare parts. They're not perfect and they do break. So that's what I do anyway. So this particular one, it already needs a spare membrane. So, you know, we may as well think about giving it a spare one of these as well. Replace both, because that previous button was just terrible. So that's what I mean. Even this D-pad, it's fairly gone. It's all quite broken, but might be able to repair that one. The rest of it looks fine though. So I don't know what all this dirt is really in there. It's disgusting, but I'll go ahead and wash that out in the sink, and then just obviously do a final inspection of the cable and everything. So just really have a good look and make sure there's no cable and wire damage, because if there is, you need to repair that before you go on. Otherwise you're just, you know, kind of wasting your time. This one looks in really good condition. So, you know, even things like the plug, it's all dirty and dusty. Just give that a clean at the same time. I've got a can of compressed air here. Just clean out the contacts. Obviously put alcohol down the contacts, and that'll help with those contacts down there. Sometimes you look down these things and they've got bent pins as well. So just make sure that the hole sockets are all okay. A good idea before you open the controller is to plug it into a console and test it out, because then you kind of know what you're working with. Broken button or a directional pad doesn't work, or whatever the symptom is, at least you know what to look at in more detail when you open it up. So recommend that. So I've gone ahead and cleaned up quite a few of these controllers. I'll zoom out to show you what I've done. And what I do, I've done about 5 or 6 over here. Just put all the parts together. So these are all parts that are in good condition, cleaned and ready to go, as well as all the cables and controllers. Make sure the leads are all good. I actually had one that had a bad plug, so I pulled that out and I swapped it over. And it really does help to have a box of spare parts. And then this lot over here, these are all the plastic shells. They're going off to be washed. So I'm going to go and wash all those shortly. But yeah, you end up accumulating a lot of parts. And like I said earlier, it's just good to collect the good and the bad parts and just put them aside and use them in other builds. So I've got a box just off shot here. So this is all spare parts, plenty of lids, boards and contacts, and you know, more membranes down there, D-pads and all sorts of stuff. So I am lucky enough to have a lot of spare parts. So when I encounter problems, you know, like this, I can just swap it out. So I've got plenty of these, and I've just swapped that out. But I will show you quickly how to fix this particular style. And just to be really clear about it, it's this style, which is like the octagon shape controller. So you can fix these ones pretty easily. These are the ones you want. So if you open yours up and it's octagon shaped, half the battle's won. These are much better build quality. There is another model I'll show you in a second, which is not as good. And these ones we can melt the edges and just extend them, and they're okay, but that's something I'm looking to 3D print, as I was saying. So just let me show you the other case for a second. Okay, so the other case looks like this, and it's square. So if you compare the two, one's square and one's octagon. Okay, so the square one, unfortunately, is it's just harder to repair. So the D-pad that comes out of it, you know, it also has broken edges, which is not the end of the world. We can fix that, but it's a lot deeper. If you look at the depth of this thing and you compare it to that one, see how vastly different they are. And what that does is, when this thing sits in there flush, it actually sticks out a mile, and you know, the rubber part sits on top, and there's actually a different shape rubber membrane as well. It's a square one, and it doesn't matter what you do, it's always sort of loose. And the reason is because when these were made, there was actually a rubber, or sorry, not a rubber, there was a foam insert that went in there that lifted this up and gave it a lot of spring, so like a lift, so high. And when they were new, that it all worked fine. But now that they're old and that foam's deteriorated and fallen out, it's probably what that brown dirt stuff is in there. we sort of have no real easy way to fix this because it needs to sit back sort of in that sort of position, and there's a lot of gap there. And the only way I can really think of to fix this is to 3D print a replacement D-pad and move this edge here more sort of halfway down, or maybe even just reduce the whole height of this. So there's that method, or the method would be to cut and put a new rubber membrane in or something, you know, foam or rubber in there just to pad it out. But I don't really like the idea of that. So if you come across a square one like this, unfortunately, like right now, which is late November 2016, I don't have a solution for you that's reliable, but I'm working on that, and I'll come back with another video to discuss that solution shortly. But you know, for now, hopefully you've got yourself an octagon shaped one with 8 sides, and you know, you can go ahead and get yours working. Okay, so we're going to have a look at repairing the D-pad. I've had a quick go at this side, and I'll just show you how I do it. So when these edges break off, the only option you've really got is to extend the plastic out just by melting it. So what you do is I just sit it in this small vise, just put you up on a stand so you can see, and put it on a small vise just so I've got some flat edges underneath. And then I just get a cigarette lighter and a small flat blade screwdriver and just melt the edges of plastic. You'll see it start to melt, and then very carefully push the plastic forward. You might have to have a go at it upside down just to get the heat into the right area. It's a bit of trial and error, this stuff, and if it catches on fire, quickly blow that out, and you'll see that you can start to move the plastic. And what it does is it forms a nice lip on the edge. So that one's almost done. Look, it does distort the D-pad a little bit, but overall, it's not too bad a solution. From the top side, you don't see any changes, so it's quite good. Let's try that one more time. There you go. Yeah, so you just aim with a little channel. Let's try it on this side as well. So initially I did it in the vise, but it might actually be easier to do it out of the vise. Push it up like that, and it forms a really nice edge on the other side. And that's almost enough to hold it in place. It's definitely not pretty, but it does work. And there you go. So the edges are all come up pretty well. That one's a bit untidy, but we can file that back. And to see if you've got enough space, just do a test fit, and it should sit in really well and not fall through, which it does. So yeah, that one came up really well. So if you can see that edge there, that's what you're aiming for. Quite a nice rounded edge like that, with a nice pronounced lip on it. Then it's just a matter of getting a file and trimming them down. So I've got a small file here. I'll just pick up a whole pack of those. They're really cheap. And then just put it in the groove and just give it a few runs along each edge. just sort of recuts a nice corner and like a little 90-degree angle. And you're probably good to go. All right. So that is the Backyard Aussie repaired D-pad. Not too bad. It could be better, but for a quick rush job on camera, that's not bad at all. It'll work fine. That one's a little bit rough. Just take that edge down a little bit, and then we just refit. And that's not going anywhere. That is solid as a rock. Of course, it all still moves, and from the top side, you really can't tell the difference. It's perfect. So that'll work really well. So that's how I do it. If you've got a better way, let me know, or post a link to your videos showing how to do it. But, you know, for the community watching, I think these things will always break, and right now without 3D printed replacements, this is probably a good solution. But yeah, I'm looking into the 3D printer now, so it's due to arrive, and we'll see what comes. We'll see what comes from that. That could be really cool. I could print some replacements that just drop in. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, guys, we're over in the laundry, and I've just had these controller parts soaking in soapy water for quite a while, you know, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So I'll give them a scrub in a minute, and they'll come up brand new. Definitely put the plug in, because you get all these, you know, little buttons and so forth, and they're going to go straight down the drain. So don't be stupid. Just take care. Count your parts before you put them in. Just know what's going in and what's coming out. Get yourself a scrubbing brush and just give them a quick rub down, and they're good to go. And then once you've washed them, I just lay them out outside on a table just to air dry. And a good little tip is to get yourself a can of compressed air, and just in the small parts like here and inside the button, you kind of just want to just blow them out, just so it's quicker to dry. It's a bit hard to do this with one hand, but yeah, you get the idea. They'll dry pretty quick out in the open air. It's only a cool day here today. It's only about 18 degrees Celsius, so I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. And, you know, 10 minutes or so later, all the parts are nice and dry. So I've picked out a few bits and pieces, and we're going to continue the reassembly. So put your camera back up so you can see what's going on. Got 2 buttons, got a D-pad, got a front case, got a rear case, and there's all the original parts I pulled out earlier. That's no big deal. We'll just pick a few of those. So what I like to do is put it in that sort of orientation with the cable this way. Grab a cable board, just put it on your lap, and we're going to put it in this sort of direction. Drop our D-pad in, drop our buttons in. Put our conductive buttons on. Doesn't really matter which way they go, as long as they connect on the right pins, that's all fine. They're all pretty much the same of this particular model. Some of them are actually joined together. So yeah, and while we're here, like, you might notice this particular one's got some dust and stuff all over it on this underside. I have cleaned that side, but it is always worth getting that dust and junk off as well, because that'll just go back into the controller if you're not careful. So really, you could give these a wash as well, but I didn't. I just isopropped those, and they should be fine. So you just put your parts back in. I'll show you the D-pad repair in a second, but the reassembly is very straightforward. Just drop your board back in like that. Cable goes around the posts like that, in that sort of position. And you can put the lid back on and screw it down. That particular orange wire there is a little bit crushed, but I've had a good look at that, and it's completely fine. So I don't really need to do anything with that. The case then refits, and before we put the screws in, you just give it a hold and a bit of a press, and just make sure everything feels okay, which it does. And then grab some screws. Okay, I'll go ahead and refit those screws, and that's pretty much the finished product. All we'll do next is give it a quick dusting down with some plastic protectant. I just use automotive Armor All protectant. It works on any plastic really, so I just spray a few squirts onto some microfiber cloth and just give the whole controller a wipe down, getting it pretty much over everything. Yeah, you might be a little bit concerned that this is a silicon-based product and it's all slippery and hard to hold, but it's not the case. If you get that particular one that I showed you, or I think any of the modern ones pretty much now, they don't have that slippery feel anymore. I think they've got past that era, and no one likes that, not even in their car. So they're all pretty good. They dry completely in just a couple of minutes, and then you're left with a really nice surface that's protected and looks good, and it's going to last. It's going to repel dust and all that sort of stuff. So I tend to go over the whole thing right down the cable and onto the plug, and then you end up with a nice product like that. It's not brand new, it's not perfect, but geez, it's pretty damn good. So, and that's all you need to do. The Master System is a very simple controller, just old school wiring and contact pads. So there's not much we can do about all these scratches here. It's just the way it is. But that one now is complete. I'll put the screws in and we're wrapped up. So like always guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.